Be sure to watch my TED Talk on londonreal.tv. In London, technology is the Silicon Roundabout. Introducing a new talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. Silicon Real. Each week, interviewing entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, financial technology, accelerators, and incubators in an exciting three-person format. Learn about the people behind the innovation. Locally filmed, locally sourced. Silicon Real. It's about the people. This is Silicon Real, the weekly talk show dedicated to the people of the London technology startup scene. I am Brian Rose. I host London Real. It's the same studio, but it's kind of non-techy. This week we have the guys from Vice Media on, Matt Ellick, who you introduced me to.
Fellow Canadian?
Yeah, those guys are really killing it. He talks about everything Vice. He talks about one of the reporters going missing in Ukraine and like everything they're doing. $billion rumor acquisitions from...
Yeah. Did he talk about that much?
He couldn't really. He was like, don't ask me about that. I asked him, but you know, he demurred.
Yeah.
But it's like Murdoch wants to buy him and Time Warner. And anyways.
Who's the founder of that again? What's his name?
Shane Smith.
Shane Smith.
Yeah, 40-something-year-old. Started off as in Montreal actually. 94 as a punk magazine.
He's a dude.
Yeah, he's a dude.
Empire, what he's done.
Yeah, it's...
Think about that. It's $1 billion.
Do you do anything with Vice?
No.
It's really hard to get your head around, and they produce so much content. If you go on there, they have hundreds of staff in Brooklyn.
But they're killing it
over here, but they are killing it.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way where you get people like Murdoch wanting to buy it, but then Vice is openly against publications like The Sun and Fox News and things like that. So yeah, it's a whole weird little conundrum.
You know, WPP has a stake in it.
Yeah, they have a small stake, right? Like 5% or something. Maybe Vice doesn't want people to know that. No, they're pretty open about it. So anyways, that's at London Real. Check that out at londonreal.tv. But today we're here to talk tech. My co-host is Colin Pyle, running a gourmet coffee company, subscription-based services. Crew Cafe, you're in Italy. What's going on? So somebody made a comment on the last video that said every time you said, I'm going to Italy to make a new blend.
Well, it's fucking hard work making new blends, right? So I just got back from Italy late last night, so I'm no longer going. Things are good, man. A couple new blends literally coming off the shelf. So they closed down. August 2nd to the 24th. It's like factory close. So we gotta really get our
the whole month.
The whole month, pretty much. So we're getting our orders in for our new blends. Should be ready end of July. Arrive in London, and away we go, man. It's busy.
And what makes up, like, what do you do, and what do you say? Oh yeah, that's the blend.
Yeah, it's what we're really trying to do is not anything special. We're trying to take what's happening in Shoreditch with the great coffee shops and just put it in a capsule. So a lot of it's taking what Red Brick's doing, what Workshop's doing, and trying to match the taste profiles and trying to see if we can replicate it through an espresso capsule.
Nice.
So that's what a lot of it is, trying to taste, and it's trying to match the strengths and make sure you sort of...
That's a great marketing message you just came up with there too. Yeah, nice. All right, cool.
Shortage in a capsule.
All right, enough about coffee. I hear about coffee every week. So let's get on with the show. Our guest is Mr. Damian Kimmelman, who is the founder and CEO of DueDil, which organizes private company information into a real-time decision intelligence tool. How's that?
It's good.
Pretty good, huh? You got big companies that use your product like McKinsey, KPMG, Dell, the Home Office, and Stripe. We had one of their founders, John Collison, on last year. Great company. You guys just raised either 17 million or 17 million dollars. I'm not sure in Series
It's dollars, but we've actually raised about 22 million in the last year.
Okay, all right, $22 million in the last year. Okay.
Sounds bigger in dollars. It sounds even bigger in Canadian dollars.
There we go. That's a lot of loonies and toonies.
The Financial Times called you guys the Bloomberg of private companies. I was trying to think about that earlier, and then I realized, isn't Bloomberg a private company? But we will talk about that. You just won the International Entrepreneur of the Year award from Tech City News. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You had a lot of competition. I mean, or the other awards winners were like 20 people that have been on the show, sat in that very seat, guys like Hussein Kanji, Sherry Kotu, Easy Vidra, Tavitt Hinkrist from TransferWise. I mean, it was like a who's who on the stage that night.
I shouldn't have won.
Like, you know, but you
I think somebody paid. I didn't pay them, but I'm sure. I'm sure that was rigged.
Money exchanged hands. Damian, thanks for being here. Welcome to Silicon Real.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You know, I remember that term DueDil from my old days in the banking world. I'm sure you know it. And the guys in M&A, I was always in trading, and my M&A guys would always just use the DueDil. They'd be like, they would always use it as Wall Street guys did in a non-Wall Street term. Like you're about to get married, they'd be like, did you do the DueDil on her? Right. And it was always like you're about to do a deal, and then you need to do the due diligence, as in run through all the numbers. And it was never considered necessarily a sexy thing to do because the analysts would kind of do it. But it was the way you found out if the deal was really worth doing or if you were just going to buy a dream or something you weren't being told. And I was wondering, you know, if you look at your business model, it seems like so many great companies, so simple, and yet it's such a big game changer. And like you guys are getting awards for good reasons. When did DueDil and data like this become so hot and become so sexy and so important?
Well, I think that there are a number of ways of explaining it, but I think the easiest way to explain it, and both of you worked in public markets, well, if you look at the bid to ask spread, so the difference between what I want to sell versus what somebody wants to buy, that's dropped down to next to zero, which means that all of these algorithmic trades are creating so much liquidity in the market. There's so much, there are algorithms producing news, and there are algorithms reading the news and taking actions on top of the news, and that's dropped, you know, the bid-ask spread next to zero. And that means that there's so much information, there's no information. If information is surprise, you know, if information is the difference between the ones and the zero, the context, that means that you have to go to other markets to find the excitement, right? To find the opportunity. When you look at private markets in Europe alone, there's a 250 billion euro shortfall in SME lending. There's a 450 billion euro misallocation of finance to private companies. These are indicators that there's a huge amount of disorder in the information. And, you know, it wasn't that long ago that public companies acted like private ones. You know, public companies only present their financials 4 times a year, right? It's not, the rest is speculation, or news from the company. But that's going to change. You know, 99.8% of businesses are private. They make up 50+% of GDP across any first world economy. And if you look at those stats, then you realize the amount of opportunity is really, you know, people say we're going to be, that the economy is going to change because of the, small to medium-sized businesses. Well, that's why, right? The opportunity is with the small to medium-sized businesses. There's been a huge trend of private companies acting like public ones, and with the likes of AngelList and Seedrs, or Funding Circle and what have you. Just as there's a huge trend of for the last sort of 10 years of individuals acting like companies, and that's just organizing the disorder of information. So the eBays, the Stripe, the eBays, the Squares of the world, that's the people acting like companies, and then you have the Funding Circles, the AngelLists, and ourselves, the private companies acting more like public ones.
When you meet someone and you pitch them on what you guys can provide to them as a service, is there a place you start? I mean, a lot of people probably see DueDil and they're like, I don't even know what that means. I don't know how it could, affect my business. Is there something simple you hit them with right away, as in this is what we can do right now?
So we ask them what their problems are, because the data can be useful for a number of problems, and I think what separates us from our competition and what we like to show is that we're concerned about the company's problems, and a lot of the incumbents don't take phone calls, they don't listen to their customers, And most people that we speak to, I think, to be fair, our product, still has a lot of work to do. We still have a lot of stuff that we need to build out. But one of the things that people keep on coming back to us and saying is, you guys really listen and take feedback, whereas nobody else will listen to us. It falls on deaf ears.
You made a good comparison. Like if you look up someone that you want to hire, pretty much these days you can go to LinkedIn, or they have to provide you with a CV with 10, 20 years of their history and where they went to school and everything. But if you go to a private company, say you're doing business with a private company that's going to have receivables, or you're going to have to trust them to a certain way for reputation reasons or cash flow reasons, and you come up with very little, right?
Very little.
Especially before you guys came along.
Yeah.
Especially available electronically, I'm guessing.
Even now, you think the access of information with Google and the great search engines, it's still really hard to find out information about private companies.
And isn't it crazy? And what 10 years ago, LinkedIn did this thing where they allowed people to put up their CVs online. And everybody was like, I don't want to put my CV up online. But people started to realize that by putting their CVs up online, you'd be found for a job instead of having to find a job. And that flips the whole dynamic. And with companies, people have often conflated this notion of a private company means privacy. And that's wrong. Private means limited liability. Private means privately held, not publicly held. It doesn't mean privacy. That's an incorrect conflation. Limited liability is probably the biggest wealth creation invention of all time.
Right.
It's created Silicon Valley. It's created, the ships that went to sail the seas to the Spice Islands, and it's this concession by society for the common good. It says you can screw up, you can fuck up, and we're not going to put you in jail, and that's amazing, right? That means people can take audacious risks. They can, put all this, information up online and give it away for free, and the thing that is dangerous is that because of the word private has been conflated with privacy, you have the creation of anonymously owned companies that can intimidate competitors, can manipulate tenders, and when the going gets tough, completely disappear. And that's really harmful to society. And this is a concession given by society for the common good. And I'm not saying that companies need to open up all of their information. That's wrong. But understanding who owns a company and and who that is very, very important.
Do you look at yourself as more of an information company than, say, a fintech company?
We look at ourselves as a technology company.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're just providing information out there. The fact that it's financial information is...
So, the way we're a predominantly technology-based company. The reason why I don't think that we're a business information company is because, we come from a tech background. We're trying to fix a problem in the market with technology, not, the other way around. I think, being an information provider is really missing out on the opportunity. Data isn't as valuable as information. And to create information from data, you have to create context, the ones and the zeros, right? And data is not the new oil. That's like, have you ever heard that?
No.
Some people say like data...
I'm running in the wrong circles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that
you're running with the not cool kids, right?
the vice guys?
Yeah.
So that goes along with big data. It's not about the data, in your opinion. It's the information.
But it's the information. So data is not the. So some people say data is the new oil. I don't know any commodity that grows exponentially every single day, right? I don't.
Yeah.
So just on that level, it's just incorrect.
It would have no value anymore, a commodity like that.
Yeah, and when everything that consumes electricity at some point will be connected to the internet and will be a data provider, you have a huge amount of data. You have data glut. And what happens is you really need to look for the information and the insight from the data. And the way that you get that is through context, through collaboration, so speculation, and through analytical algorithms. The biggest value in data is insights that lead to actions, and the actions that are attributable back to the data.
Can you give us an example of some data that you guys might get a hold of, and then the information you would provide a client?
Certainly. So, and I want to caveat this by saying the last 3.5 years, what we've been working on is building the infrastructure so that you can process huge amounts of data, and that you can model it in really exciting ways. So we've been building the infrastructure to do the kinds of things that you want to do. But the kinds of things that customers can do right now is they can find all of the companies in Northwest London that have a debt-to-equity ratio of X that are in whatever industry you want. Conversely, you can find one of our clients has a really interesting company, Zipcar.
I used them last weekend. Yeah, impressed.
They look for new businesses that start up 800 meters away from a particular sort of parking spot. There are a huge number, everything from NGOs and nonprofits looking to look at their donor list and reconcile it against businesses and individuals, and look for proxies of their net wealth, to marketers, to people who are trying to understand the risk profile of their portfolio. It's a really, really broad range of use cases, and that's why we always we ask for what's the problem, because financial data has so many opportunities to help with that.
Yeah, I was thinking like credit scores, and that's like iteration 1, right? And then there's like so many. I wasn't even thinking that you could, search by company geograph, money raised, this kind of thing. I'm already thinking how I can use it for this business. Yeah, I'm thinking sponsors.
There we go.
I'm sure you're thinking coffee, right?
Well, and are you guys just in the UK?
UK and Ireland and 20 other countries through our API.
20 other countries, because as a small business owner, just for an example that I'm going through right now is, I'm looking to buy about 1,000 machines, and I'm dealing with an importer from Portugal and a factory in China. And it's like, when or how far away do you think we are from making kind of some of this information global, and allowing small businesses like me to make more informed decisions?
Certainly in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
There's so many data sets that are so exciting. So imports and exports, you get that globally, and you understand. So, and what's interesting about imports and exports is that you have a proxy for exposure to a currency. So it's not only useful for finding importers and exporters, it's also useful for FX, which is your background, right? there's so many. That's the thing about data. There's something might not be useful to one type of user, but it can be useful to another, and it can be really, really useful to another. The opportunity is really about handling the data properly and being able to traverse it, and being able to really build ways to manipulate the data and extract value from it.
What did Gordon Gekko say? The most valuable commodity I know of is information.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like you're right, just information to one person is useless, and to another it can make a huge... I'm just thinking about even the traders in the city.
Sure.
If they can look at private companies for trends or info or whatever, they could use that and to trade public markets. Anyways, my mind's going crazy. Yeah. I was wondering if you could tell us about the genesis of DueDil. I mean, is this something that you just sat back and saw all happening 4 years ago, and you saw yourself on stage accepting the award? I mean, was it that simple or linear, or has this completely changed over the last few years?
So I always knew that it was going to happen. So I'll start from where I started. So back in university, I flipped a lot of properties, and I made quite a good amount of money. I went to St. Andrews in Scotland, and this was sort of 2002 to 2006. And you had a sort of a three-pronged awesome effect, which is burgeoning real estate prices. You had the Prince William effect, so a lot of Americans came to the university. And you had a problem, and you actually had two other really quite cool things, which was a lot of the universities went through this fire code regulation that you had to, if you had housing of multiple occupants, there had to be certain fire doors and fire safety measures, and then you had a real arbitrage on the U.S. dollar to pound. So I bought in U.S. dollars and I sold in pounds, and so it was just a wham bam, thank you ma'am of awesomeness.
Perfect storm.
Perfect storm of great macro trends hitting a small town with nobody was competing on doing real estate. If I was trying to do it in London, as a student, but being a student in a small town, there wasn't a lot of competition. So that was really an awesome thing for me. And in doing that, I realized that I could not work for anybody. And I thought, what's the next thing? And I realized that real estate wasn't going to happen for that much longer. So I looked at the opportunities, and I saw, one of my best friends who I wanted to go into business with had been roommates with Chris Hughes from Facebook, one of the founders of Facebook. I realized that social gaming was probably going to be the next big thing. And what was bigger than poker, because poker was the biggest social game at the time, or like our view of what social gaming was, it was online mahjong. Mahjong is Chinese gambling. It's it's a game that's totally offline. But we thought that we could port it online. It's got 4 times the demographic of poker, and there's a huge Chinese diaspora. And while it's illegal to gamble in mainland China, we thought that we could get the Chinese and other countries who had been separated from families and who want to game with each other. So we decided to build it, and we had we didn't know this. We didn't know how to do front-end development. I wasn't a front-end engineer, and so we met this guy, and he was pretty cool. He had built some pretty beautiful sites, and so we got him to come on board. One thing led to another, and we realized that we would, really be in trouble if we launched this. We went to Vegas for 10 days, which was trouble in itself. But we realized that either we'd be shut down or something bad would happen to us.
Okay. From the gambling industry somewhere.
Yeah, from China.
From China, okay.
And so we said, my friend Rob said that he wanted to finish his PhD. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, so I said to this guy who ran the front end agency, I said, listen, why don't we set up a company together? I will put whatever you put, I will match whatever you put into the business. He put in £60,000 into the company from a Barclays loan, and it was based off of his current assets, so his house and things like that, and his management accounts. And 6 months went by, and things just got more and more dubious. And I asked my accountant, can you look at these accounts? Can you see what's going on? And he said, they're totally cooked. And I said, Christ,
This is your partner's accounts?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I said, wow, this is really scary. This is a real problem. This is a problem that an institution can't read these accounts. This is a problem that I can't read these accounts. And at university, I'd done an internship for 2 years doing risk assessment on CDSs, which you would probably know is completely hilarious, doing risk assessment on a market that's completely non-transparent, and you can't.
I traded credit default swaps for 9 years.
Yeah,
love those guys.
Yeah. And doing risk is a joke on that. Like, but I realized when I had done this internship that pricing risk effectively was central to every B2B interaction. And I realized that if Barclays couldn't do it and I couldn't do it, then a whole lot of people in between couldn't do it. And that was really the genesis of DueDil. And it was to simplify it. DueDil was the idea that it was, it's an abbreviated due diligence, right? That was the original notion of the word, plus it was unique and all of that. Then when we launched DueDil, we opened up, we got approached by ActionAid, and they said, can you show us, do you have the data on the FTSE 100 companies that have subsidiaries based in tax havens? And this was 2011, and April 2011. And so we opened this up, and that led to the revelations of Starbucks and Google not paying tax. It was a huge expose of data, and we realized that if I couldn't read these accounts, if Barclays couldn't read these accounts, and if politicians couldn't read these accounts, this was something that could really change the world. And most startups are like, yeah, we can change the world, and it's total bullshit, right? It's total and utter crap. Like
your mahjong, was that like, I'm going to change the world?
No, it was like, I'm going to make shitloads of money and wear bling watch.
Did you watch the show Silicon Valley? I keep going back to it. Did you watch it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's one point where they're all pitching at the very end, and it's this pitch, and at the very end...
I haven't seen it.
Spoiler alert, spoiler alert.
But every company is making the world a better place.
Right.
So,
yeah.
You were saying. Change the world.
But this could really change the world. It could, presenting evidence instead of conjecture in politics could really change the world. And that was really exciting, but we realized that, to do the work on the tax haven stuff, it only took, 2 or 3 weeks worth of work.
So you guys did the numbers on Starbucks and Google and
so if you go, so we were really scared at the time, but if you search ActionAid DueDil,
okay,
you can see that all of the data is attributable back to us.
To you guys, wow.
And they wrote an article about how they found all of the data, but we were a real young startup, and we were like, FTSE 100 companies, these are hopefully going to be our clients,
right? Yeah.
And so we weren't sure if we wanted to take real credit for it, but we just wanted to be acknowledged because we knew that it would be transformative. But we realized that if we really wanted to be transformative, we really had to build the infrastructure. And so most of our work has been on building infrastructure, on the stuff that you don't see. Very recently, we've started to productize and started to show some of the things that we can do with that infrastructure and realize some problems that we made with the infrastructure. It's not all like perfect story, like everything goes smoothly, and but I think that the most exciting stuff has yet to come, and this is really, it's really the tip of the iceberg. There's so much data. It's such a fallacy to say, that businesses won't share this data. I think you said before, there's a difference between opening up information and exposing it and sharing it. And there are different privacy concerns for different data sets, right? Some data you want to share, right? With a few, you share secrets, right? You don't share them publicly. And so I think a lot of people don't understand about DueDil is that we're not about exposing everything. We're about, if there's data that's public, we'll make it easy to access, right? Because that's public data. If it's private, we will certainly abide by those rules, if not, trying to help users to make that private, because I think it's about choice. Some things are out of your choice, and that's what should be in the public domain. And when the public domain says this shouldn't be public anymore, then we should abide by those rules. And that's sort of my view on data, but businesses will share. And you're starting to see it. If users will share, if people will share what they had for breakfast, on Twitter, if people will share their CVs, and that was really personal before,
right?
But it helps them.
Are you seeing attitudes in business change to where people are like, wow, now I see that if I share information about my financials, I can get more clients that way?
Yeah, totally. Look at AngelList or look at TradeShift, right? So TradeShift is invoices, and it's a network of invoices. And that's really cool, right?
Yeah. We had Market Invoice on here, so it was a similar model.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating how that can open up capital immediately.
Yeah.
Right.
And then look at AngelList, where you share a huge amount of stuff, but you allow access to certain investors to see it. Right? That totally is transforming venture capital. And now it's really super scary for some VCs. because it's hurting their model.
Sure, access to they kind of controlled the funnel and they had access to the information, and now it's.
Let's talk about the U.S. because it's obviously always the big old elephant, and like everyone's business model sooner or later has to address what's happening there.
Does it?
I don't know, and then that's why I'm going to ask you this. I mean, we had Market Invoice on, and he's like, "Look, we got plenty to do here in the U.K. We got a huge receivable market. Our model's based on Company House, which I know your original one was. So yeah, how does the U.S. play in? Is it a completely different business over there as far as getting information? And do you care?" And I don't say that because I'm American. You're American too.
I'm American. Our COO is American. There's a reason why we're in Europe. I'd love to be in America. I'd love, maybe it's a little vanity, but it's my home, and I'd love to have a business that's recognized in America. But to be honest, that's just ego. There is a huge opportunity in Europe. If you look at those figures again, there's a 250 billion euro shortfall in SME lending. There's a 450 billion euro misallocation of finance to private companies. There's something like 97 billion in unpaid trade credit, just in the UK. 97 billion, right? It would be a sucker, you'd be a sucker to just want to go into the US. It's for vanity's sake.
Right.
There's, it's not as simple as that because in order to really understand companies, you have to understand beneficial ownership. But a lot of companies are owned by American companies and to trace that beneficial ownership. But that's not the only way. I think it's the problem with the UK tech scene is that it doesn't have balls, right? It doesn't have the balls that Americans have, where they will put money down on God knows what and be like, this is going to change the world, right?
Right. Is that called risk appetite? What is that?
Yeah, it's risk appetite.
Big balls.
Big balls,
but it's
right.
We've heard that before,
cultural.
though. We've definitely heard that before.
So, and what's your point about that?
Well, that's the reason why everybody thinks that they need to go to the U.S.
Okay. Because that's where the balls are, or that's where the market is?
Well, that's where the capital is,
right,
with the balls. That's where the balls are.
Follow the balls.
I didn't know that's what people were thinking when they're saying that. Is that the implicit thing there? I always thought people were thinking that's where the market was, and if you don't own that market, someone else will, and then they'll come over to the UK and swallow you up.
Look, every single place has a huge market. You think the U.S. is the only one that's making money? There are going to be more billionaires in Europe than in the U.S. in the next. There was a thing, I didn't forget who, but by 2025 there are more billionaires in Europe than in the U.S. There's a market for, if there's a market for Spanx that's multi-billion, the pull-up women's underwear, there is a market for everything. And people often look at markets in the wrong way. If you were to ask somebody, what's the market of portable music when the Walkman was around, they'd be like, oh, that's about 200 million a year, steady earner. And then comes the iPod, right? And, what's the search market? What's the size of the search market pre-Google? It's about 100 million, right? It's just ridiculous thinking of markets. Think of problems. Think of how many people does this problem affect? And is it the entry point of that problem? Right? And that to me is the real way to look at a market, not to look at it in the market cap of current bad providers of a service.
Is there, but if those numbers you talk about for the UK, there must be 20 times that in the US. Is there someone doing that in the US? There is a market for that business there, right?
So, one of the other reasons why the US is really difficult for fintech is there are 50 different states.
Right.
So data's all over the place, banking systems all over the place. You don't have anything streamlined. You have a cultural problem with that the idea of businesses should be private, and it's for privacy's sake. But every single one of those businesses, it's crazy because if you look at West Coast VCs, a lot of them are really ignorant because their whole premise is based on the fact that the more you share, the better off you are. This Rousseau thing, and then they're like, okay, but for businesses, there's an exception, right? Not mathematically. That's the law mathematically, but for businesses, no.
Right.
And they don't really see the hypocrisy. I would like, easy wins. Europe is an easy win. It's got great banking systems. We're in the financial capital of the world in London. It's fucking expensive in London, but, we're right next to some of the best universities. We have great visa policies where we can get anybody from Europe or the US. And you start to see, we've started to see a lot of candidates from Eastern Europe and from the US being like, we want to come to, so Eastern European candidates who've emigrated to the US being like, we want to come back, and they want to come back to London. I think that's pretty awesome.
Okay. So no plans immediately to go to the US?
It's something that we're always reevaluating and something that we're always looking at, but there's a huge opportunity in Europe.
I find that refreshing, man. Everyone always semes to be like,
no, but
they can't get it. They want to get there now, So,
but I think what you say, people they just see 350 million people,
right?
And that's it's a bigger market, so let's go over there. But I love the way you look at it, and that market size is this moving target, and it's just because it's existent now today with the existing players is this size doesn't mean you can't find new markets and new opportunities and find the person that would never have a Walkman. And now has an iPad every time they leave the house. So.
The real big thing is literally the balls. Europe has so many things going for it. For fintech, it has distressed economies like Spain, where the average number of days to get paid is 100 days. That's a huge opportunity, right? For somebody like Market Invoice. That's an awesome, invoice discount opportunity. Then you have, opportunities in fintech in the UK. You have tons of opportunities and tons of different ways to cut and slice it. And in the US, for fintech, you have a lot of ball aches, but you have the balls.
Right. You talk about those numbers for the UK. I love the ball thing, so I'm glad that we can use that word. But
Silicon Real, it's about the ball.
It's about the ball. But you mentioned those numbers about inefficiencies because it's all about those inefficiencies you can exploit, and that's the size of the market. If you look at that in England, you can imagine what they are in a country like Spain or Italy, where maybe I'm wrong, but I just see like a place where there could be these massive inefficiencies that have been like that for a long time and will stay that way for a lot of different reasons. But I'm speculating. What do you do with $20 million?
You try not to flush it down the toilet.
Did you ever think it's too much? I've raised too much?
No, it's too little.
Okay.
London's fucking expensive, right?
London's fucking expensive. That's in dollars.
Yeah, that's true.
I do think that it's too little, but it's the right amount for right now. So it's not the be all and end all, but it's enough for us not to screw it up.
Okay, well said. You seem like you have a really cool company culture. I mean, I saw some videos about your company, and it just seems like everybody wants to be there and work there. And obviously, you guys got lots of awards and stuff. How do you keep that culture?
We pay them a lot.
Yeah, I know. Whatever you're doing, right?
How many employees do you have?
What?
How many employees?
37.
Okay.
What's the culture like that? Is that defined by you? Is that something you thought about it?
A lot.
You don't pay a lot. You got to pay for some awards for us, by the way. But so there's nothing behind that. It just happened organically.
I think we try and do. This is going to sound hypocritical to some people that know me well, so I'm going to caveat it just by we try and do things in moderation. So in terms of salary, we try and give a fair wage, fair options, fair. We really try and be equitable. We have a culture that I think is very Buddhist in the sense that it's there aren't that many rules. The only rule is to use your head and to not do stupid shit. And that's more on like things that will be bad, right? You don't steal, those kind of rules, the fundamentals. What we try and do in the company is we try and hire people who are super proactive and who have a really great attention to detail, and give them the flexibility and reduce the barriers for them to be productive. And I see my job as not motivating, but reducing the things that impede motivation and allow them to be, because people are always self-motivated, right?
Good people are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, but they hate bullshit. And so if you remove the bullshit, and you don't allow bullshit to happen, and you have to be able to clamp down when bullshit happens. But if you reduce that and you've hired great people, then it's a fun place to work, because a fun place is not a place where you just get to dick around. A fun place is where you are really energized about what you're doing and you get to dick around, right?
Right, and you get cool stuff done.
Yeah.
Right.
And so you feel positive at the end of the day about doing the stuff that you really love. And that's what I try and do in the company. And sometimes I get it horribly wrong. But I think so far we've gotten it right.
How important is it to have a face on a company? We know with Facebook it's Zuckerberg, and with Apple it was Jobs, and I'm putting you in good company. For DueDil it's definitely Damian, and you're out there, and the award went to you, and I know there's a great company behind you. But is it important for it to have a pretty outspoken person or a pretty high profile person these days?
So, I think yes, but I don't think that that's my main job or goal. I think that my main goal is not to run out of money, and to hire the best people to, and retain the best people to achieve the goal of the company.
I was reading an article actually just recently on that, about the number of CEOs that have Twitter and are like have a social presence.
Right.
And it's, if you take the top, I think it was the top 500 companies in the U.S.
Public or private? And we got to talk.
Yeah, I think it was public, because they were talking about how Elon Musk has a really public profile and how he can tackle things instantly, right? So when the New York Times writes a shitty article that's bullshit about Tesla, he's on it that day, writing a blog and tweeting about it and quashing it instantly.
Right.
And so few CEOs actually have that public profile, and they were saying it's they did some data, and it was, you know, hugely beneficial to have that public profile. So and the public trusts the company more as well, they were saying. So
totally.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason why all of these satires are coming out about Silicon Valley and stuff, and it's because, you know, it's a thing now, and they're going to be even more. Right?
Yeah, it's just getting started, right?
Yeah. And that's kind of validation that it's the next big thing. I don't see it as a sign of that it's peaking. I actually think that it's a validation that it's a thing, that it's actually stable. I don't know of any satires about bankers.
Well, there were movies in the 80s and 90s, but
right.
yeah, lately, no. Well, it's Wolf of Wall Street, which is about a guy in the 80s.
In the 80s.
Yeah. No.
So, totally.
An article written about that recently, yeah.
Was it?
Yeah, about how these things used to be satirical and how it's Silicon Valley, and it's for a good reason, right?
Yeah. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was just...
Yeah.
Making that observation.
Yeah.
Well, you talked about the lack of balls. You know, we always comes up at the end of the show, whether we're talking about where does London stack with the rest of the world. Okay, we naturally look across the Atlantic a little bit, and maybe we should. Silicon Valley's been around for 50 years, 70 years if you go back to semiconductors. But what do we need to do different here? You know, you said everyone's looking to the West for balls. I mean, do we need to find some here? Do we need to throw our capital around more here? I mean, you're here doing it. But what the culture has to change, right? Or we're not going to get the acceleration. We're not going to get the Silicon Valley
culture
show.
is changing.
Yeah.
And some of the East Coast VCs are starting to come to London.
Like yours.
And yeah, but also, you know, they're actually starting to be like, well, you know, actually it's not just Tel Aviv, which is crazy. Like, let's put offices in London. And
before they were going straight to Tel Aviv.
Yeah.
Okay.
And which is weird if you look at the number of billion-dollar companies out of London and out of like general Europe. I haven't done any of the real numbers, so don't quote me. But I think that's you know, it's tremendously myopic. What I think we have to do is encourage that competition, one. So encourage the competition in venture scene. And then two, I think that European companies have to really look at the opportunities in Europe itself and not build companies that should be built in the U.S. The U.S. has a great opportunity that they've milked tremendously, and that is 350 million people, all the same language, which is English. So, who are all connected, right? Europe has a huge amount of opportunities. I think that fashion is an opportunity, actually. I think aeronautics is an opportunity in London. I think making things, but I think the biggest opportunity certainly is fintech, because it's the best test bed for fintech. You are in between the two largest powers being in GMT, in between China and the US, and that's just awesome. And if you start to address some of the problems that the world's facing. I think that that's really quite cool.
What's your biggest challenge in the next 2 years? Is it hiring, finding the talent, or staying focused?
Yeah.
Both?
Yeah, you actually.
I should be a CEO. And you wrote an article at the Huffington Post recently about immigration. Is talent hard to find for you?
I would say for certain positions, yes. I think you'd always be deluded if you think it's easy, but because it's not, you're probably hiring the wrong people if you say it's easy. But do I think it's a lot easier than in the U.S.? In a lot of ways, yes, because the U.S. is fortunate that they have 350 million people to choose from, so they have a huge candidate pool, but their visa policies suck, right? Yeah. Getting people from abroad just sucks. Yeah. And we live in a global economy, and there are smart people in Africa, there's smart people in Asia, there's smart people in Europe, there's billion-dollar opportunities in Africa, there are billion-dollar opportunities in Asia, there are billion-dollar opportunities in Europe, and quite frankly, I sort of like the way that the Chinese do business, in the sense that they've gone into Africa. I want to caveat that by I don't like what they're doing in Africa, but I like the fact that they're willing to go into Africa because there's huge opportunity, and they say to these governments, and it's pretty cheeky. They say, "Oh, we'll build the infrastructure if you let us excavate." This, but you need the infrastructure in order to excavate it. So that's awesome. And they look at places and they look for where other people are too scared or too worried about the opportunity, and they have rich pickings. This xenophobic sort of American idea that the U.S. is the only place where there's opportunity is totally short-sighted and frankly idiotic.
I love it. I'm so glad you said that. We always finish up with a few questions. They might be a little personal, but I'm going to hit you with them. If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Damian Kimmelman and give that young man a bit of advice, what would you tell him to do?
Not to go to university.
Really?
Yeah.
Nothing practical.
I loved university,
right?
And I loved.
You made a lot of money in real estate.
Yeah,
at university.
You met your co-founder that screwed you over.
Yeah,
and to start the business.
But your life evolves in so many different. If I didn't go to university, I wouldn't have met my girlfriend now, and I wouldn't have been in Canada last week. But I wouldn't have gone to university.
No value there, really. Not worth the time.
It's not that there's no value. It's that there's no value to what I want to do.
Okay.
And I stupidly didn't do an internship at a startup. So a lot of the problems I've had to experience myself. And that could arguably be said, well, isn't that better because you've rewritten what you want? And I don't really buy into that. I really, the reason why, look at Elon Musk or, all of the PayPal mafia, that's awesome. And the reason why they did so well was because they were all in a great company at the time that, grew tremendously during a short period of time, and they saw what worked, and they were able to use those insights in other companies. You have the Peter Thiels, you have Elon Musk's, why am I? You have
the YouTube guy too, right?
Yep, Brad Hurley, and you also have from LinkedIn. Can't believe
I forgot his name.
Founder of
The LinkedIn guy.
Yeah.
So you wish you would have started earlier, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So rather than perhaps go to university, spend 4 years working for startups and learning, and learning that way.
And now I would say for people that are thinking of going into university, either, look 10 years ahead, and what do you see? You see a huge amount of opportunity in the Internet of Things. You see a huge amount of opportunity in biotech. This is all information seeping out into other parts of the world, right? And I think that's what you'd want to try and work on.
Good. Second part of that question, best advice you've ever received, business or personal?
Should probably have a canned answer for
It's always a tough question. It is. Everyone's always like, damn. What about business?
I think, I'm a big fan of Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen, and they say something that I really object to, and it's one of the only things that I object to. And they're like, this whole thing about startups and failing, we don't like failures, we like winners. Like, don't fail. And I see what they're talking about, but I think that, really refining how you fail, and optimizing so that so failures don't cost a lot should be the message. Because it's fine, and say we like winners, and everybody likes to win, right? And it's wrong saying that failure's all right. Failure's not all right, but both of those messages miss the mark, which is learn how to minimize the cost of failing, of trying something out. The whole point of the internet is that you can try things out. And the whole point of a startup is that you can test assumptions. I was really, when I first started out, I was really shy about failing and failing publicly, and and asking for help. And I think that's the worst thing that you can do. Look like an idiot. I look like an idiot all the time.
You do?
Yeah, loads. Ask Mike Butcher. The first time that I pitched DueDil, I was sweating, I was nervous, I was stuttering. I couldn't keep my eyes open because I was so nervous. It was just in front of 20 people, and it doesn't matter. I hate public speaking. It's something that I try and get over, and try and do a lot to get over. But it's, it doesn't come easily.
Damian, thanks so much for coming by. This is a great story. It's really compelling, this story. I want to see how this movie ends. Yeah. Or at least see.
I don't want it to end.
Yeah, see at least Rocky 2, maybe 3 or 4 or something like that.
Bling bling watch.
How can people get a hold of you? Are you guys hiring? What's the whole story there?
So we are hiring a huge amount now. We've only hired 3 people since Series B, largely because we wanted to make sure that we could scale. Now we're hiring a lot. We have actually, I think, 17 or 18 positions open. Wow. So that's very different. Yeah. You can reach me on Doodler on Twitter.
Which is DueDil.
Yeah.
Okay. DueDil.
I tried to do the dude, and it was taken.
Okay.
Which was pretty lame, but
Of course, the dude would be taken, right?
Yeah.
The dude.
No, but it was DUE.
Dude. Oh, okay, gotcha. All right, so at DueDil with an R on the end for you, at DueDil for the company, and then
Yep.
go to your website as well for jobs and things like that.
Yeah.
17, 18 jobs, man. I mean, geez.
Says
if you're not,
we're in a tough economy, right? Come on, guys. If you're unemployed out there,
seriously, if you're not emailing right now, I don't know what's wrong with you. Fantastic talking to you. It's exciting to see what you guys are going to do, and the possibilities are really limitless with this information. I haven't even started to get my head around some of the things that he can do. You know, I want to get an account actually. Yeah. I'm sure you do too now, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of good info out there. If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can catch us, our beautiful faces, on YouTube channel. And if you're listening to us live, thanks for watching. As we say, it's about the people on Silicon Real. Thanks so much, Damian, and all the best to you guys.
Thank you. Awesome.
All right, guys, take care.
We're trying to help organizations kind of cut through the fog and get to the bits that matter to their business. There's a pattern of kind of language that people use when they're in a certain place, when they have a specific intent. You construct a query which takes those little segments of patterns of words, and you build this thing, and you basically throw that at the entire data set. I look back and think, Jesus, it took us a long time to get where we got to, but I can go back over every year and think, oh yeah, I know why that took so long. It was a challenge.